I was over there and I was like, man, that bottle of water was nice and cold.
Ryan brought it.
Yeah, Ryan brought it for you.
Thank you.
What a good brother in working and worship.
What a good boss.
Yeah.
So good morning, everyone. It's always great to be here. I enjoy every time we get to come every Sunday. I enjoy getting to be around everyone. It's such a blessing for me. Just to know I'm always going to come away with something, and it's definitely just it's something that we don't deserve, but that God gives us freely. So I've written out a sermon. It all planned out, and I left it at the house.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
I would always type it on my computer, and I'll email it to myself, so I can download it on my iPad. But I emailed it, but I didn't attach the file. So, and I went to go leave to go get it, and I just felt like I was like, no, just leave it. So I'm like, okay. But I was listening to the Times Square Church this morning, and Gary Wilkerson was preaching. And one of the things he said that really stuck out to me was like, religion is coming so much. What happened is just letting God speak through you, and just trusting Him.
Amen.
He's like, we go to Bible school and we learn how to do this, and it's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing. But what happens at the times when God says, I will speak through you. I'm gonna speak what I want to speak. And that's why I turned around and just came back. So that's where I'm going. I know what we're going to talk about. It's still the same scriptures. I've changed the title. Before, the title was Escaping the Hands of the Enslaver. Now the title is The Love of Joseph. So if you want to open up Genesis 37 with me.
Genesis, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am. Just let me know when you're there. So the last few weeks we've been talking a lot about, well, to me the last few weeks has been a lot about staying away from sin and being careful what sin does. And just, having our guard up at all times. Protecting ourselves, our hearts, and protecting the ones around us from sin. And just doing everything we can to stay away from. Being wise, being around other people, letting other people encourage us, edify us, and build us up. And 2 weeks ago, I was just praying, like, God, what is it that, you want to speak? The Sunday that I'm going to preach. And He led me to, for the last year and a half, I've been going back and forth and reading the Pilgrim's Progress. It's an allegory, just of the Christian walk. And He led me to go read it. And so I opened up my Kindle, and it's the last place I left off. What was that?
John Bunyan.
Yeah. I can't read that.
Just look like you might.
Sorry.
I've done that myself. I've done the same thing. That's why
It didn't hit me in the face.
Oh, okay. Well, I've hit myself in the face.
There we go. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's what I usually
All
let
right.
someone else because you make yourself.
So, that's good.
Is that
That top one down.
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Sorry,
It's
It's
Dad.
got to go down.
the other.
My bad.
This one, hold it,
Okay.
yeah. Just a little.
No, it's got to go slip down because it's.
Oh, it's gotta go down more.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so
Is
then,
that too low
No,
now?
that's
so let me
perfect.
bring the other one.
No, that's good. That's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
He wants his nose.
So, anyway, going back to what we're talking about, I was reading the Pilgrim's Progress, and there's something that just jumped out of Joseph, with him and Potiphar's wife, and how he ran away, and that really just hit me. And that's such a good example, and we'll get more into it, but I just kind of want to give you the preface of everything. And God's like, I want you to make a contrast of what the opposite is too. And He drew me to Samson. And just the complete difference between the two of them. And so we're going to go through both the stories, and we're going to talk about it and just how it really just applies to us and how it affects us. And there's two different roads we can go down, and the difference in relationships with God that they had. So we'll start in Genesis 37, and we'll read for a little bit. I'm reading out of the ESV, and it says, Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. And these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of something. I can't say that word. Avila and Zilpah, something like that. His father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons. And because he was the first son of his old age, he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now, this created a lot of problems with the brothers because he was one of the youngest ones. And everyone had basically a wool coat that they would all get, basically keep them warm, whatever it is. But Israel decided to make Joseph a multicolored one, which basically stood out and just showed that he was a favorite. It showed to all his brothers that he was a favorite because it was a special coat. It said it was different than everyone else's. And it goes against all the customs of their time to basically go to a younger one and basically say he's like, in a sense, the head of the brothers. And so obviously this caused disunity between all the brothers. And now we'll go back to verse 5. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dream and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in his mind. So at this point, he knows God has a calling on his life. He may not know exactly what it is, but through the dream, God's revealed that he has a purpose for his life. That you can see that he's set apart already, that God's already doing something, that God's going to reveal something to him, and he's going to do something through him in the future. And a lot of times, not everyone's going to get, dreams of what God's going to do in their life. Not everyone's going to get that, hey, God's going to do this, and this is exactly what you're going to do your whole life, and this is exactly what your calling is. And obviously, through looking through the dreams, God's saying his calling is he's going to be over people. He's going to rule over people. And that people are to come to him. And, sometimes when we go and we tell people, hey, I just feel like God's calling me to this, or he's going to do this in my life, other Christians get mad. There's a jealousy, there's an anger, you think you're better than us kind of thing going on. And there's so much that can happen when we feel like there's a call in our life and we say, hey, I feel like this is my calling. And some people have very specific callings. Some people have a whole bunch of callings. Since I first became a Christian, I've always felt that my calling was to be a pastor. But Shelly hasn't always felt called to something in her life. She's never like, well, I don't feel called to a specific thing. But since she was a young girl, she's always wanted to be a wife and a mom. And to her, that's her calling. That's such an amazing calling. Especially for everyone that gets to be a wife and a mom and all that stuff. And that's so precious. And obviously I can see she has a musical gift. She also has a speaking gift. She's never preached here, but I know she can speak. I've seen her preach before, and it's amazing. But that's the one thing on her heart. She's never felt a specific thing like I have, but she knows she's always wanted to be a wife and a mom. And she knew God was going to do that through her. And so for me, that's amazing, because we all have different callings. We all have different things that are going to happen in our life. But sometimes other people's callings may be, in a sense, more elevated in our eyes than anyone else's callings, but they're all the same. They're all on the same level, and there's no one better than anyone else. But Joseph's brothers hated him because of what his calling was. They hated him because he wasn't supposed to have anything better than they were, because he was younger. And so we'll go on verse 12. It says, Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing a flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, Here I am. So he said to him, Go now and see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, What are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers. He said, Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, They have gone away, for I have heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. And they saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dream. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, Let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, Shed no blood. Throw him into the pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he may rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father. So Joseph came to his brothers. They stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into the pit. And the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Then they sat him down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming to Gilead, and with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, and on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him, and the Midianite trader passed by. And they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And they took Joseph to Egypt. And now that's really all we have to. We'll skip down, and it says to verse 36. It says, Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. And so you see, at this point, they kind of stripped the favoritism from Joseph. They kind of try to strip everything from him, and they threw him in a pit where there was no water. And you can draw the significance you want out of that, but they try to throw him into a barren place. Where Joseph had all these dreams, and he knew what his calling was, but he went down to a pit first, and then sold into slavery. And so you really just, you wonder what's going through his mind. It's like, man, God had all these, he showed me these great things he had for me, and now I'm in a waterless pit where I kind of just feel like, in a sense, where kind of the heavens are shut off, where he's not really getting anything. And we can go through that in our lives, where we feel like, man, God, you said you're going to do this, but now I'm going through such a hard time. I'm going through this, and I'm like, what happened? How did I get here? Everything was supposed to be rosy. Everything was supposed to be, dandelions and all that kind of stuff. But now he's sold, and he belongs to the Egyptians now. And you skip ahead to chapter 39. And it says, Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had brought him from the Ishmaelites, who had brought him down there. He bought him from the Ishmaelites. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph had found favor in his sight, and attended him, and made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was all that he had in the house and the field, so that he left all that he had in Joseph's charge. And because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. And at this point, you got to really imagine, Joseph is a slave at this point, but God is so taking care of him. God is so doing something to him that this Egyptian, this non-believer, is seeing like, man, something is different about this guy. Something is so different that's causing him to do everything honestly, trustworthy, and in the way it's supposed to be done.
Amen.
The fact that this man would leave someone of a different culture, a slave, in charge of everything he had without regard is unbelievable. Yeah. And you wonder with Joseph, like, he went through such a hard time. You had to wonder where his relationship with God was. Because this was a man that cared about the honor of God. He cared about his relationship with God, the way people would perceive him as God.
Amen.
And even though he was a slave to the Egyptians, he did everything he had to do because he was working as though he was working under God.
Amen.
And so you see something there. There's a relationship he has with God that's so pure and so special that he said, I'm going to do everything I have to do the way God would want me to do it. A way that's pleasing to God. Not so that I can please these people, but I want to please God more than anything else. And so you see the way he's doing it. You see the way he's conducting himself. The fact that he's in charge of everything and can be trusted. When he probably had a chance to escape and go back and find his way home or whatever, but this was a man that did what he had to do because he loved God so much. And he said, you know what? This is where God has me now.
Amen.
And this is what I have to do. This is my lot in life. And I have to be faithful at this. I can't just escape it because I don't like it.
Amen.
If God has me here, then I have to do everything God's calling me to do. And so you look at this, and then he's kind of like in a sense, on a pedestal in a way that he's looked at so respectfully. He has basically freelance or whatever he's going to do. And then you see kind of where Potiphar's wife starts creeping in. Now, in the second part of verse 6, it says, now Joseph was handsome and form in appearance. And so you think like, okay, he's been working, he's like a rock, he's like a really buff dude. He's a handsome guy, obviously, from what the Bible tells us. And you gotta think Potiphar's wife's pretty bored, she's lonely. She sees Joseph every single day. He's doing whatever they want him to do, so basically he's at her beck and call, pretty much. And it says, now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. And after a time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. He has put everything that he has in my charge. He's not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her, to lie beside her, or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were in the house, she caught him by the garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. And you look at this part, like, he's there by himself. He can get away with whatever he wants. He can probably do whatever he wants, and no one else is going to know. Potiphar won't know, the other guys won't know. He can get away with anything. And day after day and after day, this ladies keep coming after him. And you have to think, she was good looking enough to be Potiphar's wife. So you had to think, man, she's probably pretty cute. That's the way I'm thinking anyway, that he's looking. But this is the thing, you look at Joseph and he says, no, I'm not going to do this. He doesn't say because it's going to offend Potiphar. He says, how could I sin against my God? So it's not so much the concern for, offending someone else or taking something from someone else. He says, I'm not going to do this because this is against my God. This is against something you want me to do. And this was something that would break his heart.
Amen.
This was something that would take away the honor and bring dishonor upon his name.
Amen.
Because someone's going to say, this is a person of the Hebrew God at the time, and this is how they conduct themselves. And so you see, he's completely shying away from it. He doesn't want nothing to do with it. He doesn't even entertain it. He does what he has to do, and then the one day when no one's around, and he could really get away with it, she grabs him and he runs. He doesn't care what he leaves behind. He doesn't care what she takes from him, but he's like, I am not doing this to God. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want to say, but I am not going to do this against God because he's the one I truly care about, and he's the one I love, and how could I do something against him if I love him so much? And so you see, in a sense, it relates to us. When the sin presents itself to us, what do? Well, I don't want to do this because I don't want to break a rule. God's going to be mad. Or is it we don't want to do this because this is against God? Because this is against what God wants. Not so much that there's a set of rules that we've created in our mind that we can't do. But in a sense, it's I don't want to do anything to hurt God. I don't want to do anything to, bring dishonor to him, to make him even look at me differently, in a sense. To make anyone else look at me differently, to make anyone else look at God differently. And you see, just where the heart of Joseph is, it's not a religious system in its heart. It's a pure love for God.
Mhm.
It's a pure love for Him that's driving him away from anything not of God. Ever since I preached last time, we talked about music. I haven't listened to anything else but Christian music, but there's been points where I'm like, I want to listen to this, but I'm like, no, I said I'm not gonna do that, so I'm not gonna do it. And it wasn't so much I don't want to do this because this is something me and God had going. It's like I don't want to do this because I don't want to deal with this later, and so I'm kind of just I'm looking at the consequences and not so much I don't want to do it because I love God so much. And so you see, there's such a difference, and it comes into all our hearts. It's not just some people; it's everyone. I mean, sin can present itself to every single person, and the same one can eat at you day after day after day after day and never go away. But our response has to be at the very beginning where it presents itself exactly what Joe said. No, I want no part of it, and run away. He ran away from sin. He ran away from it. Didn't even stay to entertain it. Didn't even look at it. He ran away from it. And I think as a Christian, that's the way our walks with God are supposed to be. That's the way we have to look at everything else in this world. I'm not going to say we're all going to have that kind of situation that he had, but in a different sense, we could look at every single sin that way. And a lot of times we're going to see stuff coming, and it's just going to we're going to kind of see it, and we can either do two things. We can think about it. We can think about, well, is this wrong? What if I do this? Then we're going to kind of find out kind of thing. Or our hearts out of pure love is just like, no, I don't want nothing to do with this. I know when we work at Walmart at night, we do a remodel, there's a ton of people there, and I see guys talking to girls all the time, and I'm like, I don't even want to entertain the thought of ever talking to another girl, because I love Shelly so much, and I don't want to do that to her. And I was like, I don't even want to even think about the possibility of me even kind of entertaining that.
That's right. Amen.
But that needs to be the love we have for God, and I struggle with that. It's not just other people. It's like, the reason of the sermon is because God's speaking this to me, because He's fixing things in my heart.
Amen.
And there's things He has to fix a lot in me. And so you just see where Joseph's coming from, and you see the devotion, you see the love, and you see the pureness in his relationship with God. And we're going to go to Samson in a minute, but that's the reason this term is called the love of Joseph. Because you see the love he has, and that's the love God wants to put in all of us, that He wants us all to have.
Amen. Amen.
And I mean, things didn't end up good for Joseph. He got thrown in prison, but because he was obedient, because he followed God, it took him all the way to the palace. He didn't stay in Potiphar's house. God said, they're going to try to mess you up, but this is just going to help you.
That's right.
You're being obedient. I'm going to take you exactly where I want you to go. And he, without knowing it, he was following God's call. He was following exactly to his calling. He just didn't know how he was going to get there. So if you want to go to Judges 16, it actually might be a little before that. Sorry, Judges 13. We'll start there and then we'll move to 16. Just let me know when you're there. Now we'll go to Samson because this is a complete other side of the spectrum. This is completely different than Joseph. They had similar starts in the beginning in a sense, but they completely ended up at different sides. Let's start in verse 1. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And so the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the land of the hand of the Philistines. And so you look right there, Samson, before he was born, at this part, God comes to her and says, this child is going to be set apart for my purposes. For the purpose of Israel. This is why the Nazarite vow, which is it's a specific vow that God can kind of make a different circumstance with any person. And with Samson, it was the hair. That's where his change came from, because he was just set apart for God, and that's what the vow was, his hair. And so you see, like Joseph, he was set apart for a greater purpose than himself. He was set apart to deliver people, to deliver the people of God. And while Joseph may not have known exactly that he was going to help deliver the people of God by, being ruler, Samson's family did. He said he's going to save the people of Israel from the hand of the Philistines. And so you see, now you have both people, Samson and Joseph, set apart solely for God. That's the way it's supposed to be anyway.
Amen.
And so we'll skip ahead to Judges 16. Samson and Delilah. It says Samson went to Gaza, and there he saw a prostitute, and he went into her. So you see, first verse right there. This is later on, after some things that happened to him, and yada yada yada. First thing it says, he saw a prostitute, went into her. Like, it wasn't even like a thinking about it. It was just he saw what he wanted with his eyes and said, I have everything I've wanted before. I'm taking this too. I can do whatever I want. I'm getting this. And so he went into a prostitute of the enemy. And you see just where his heart's at. It wasn't even like it was trying to hide it kind of thing. He just went straight forward and got her. And the Gazites told Samson, were told, Samson has come. And they surrounded the place and set an ambush for him all night at the gate of the city. And they kept quiet all night, saying, let us wait till the light of the morning, and then we will kill him. But Samson lay till midnight, and at midnight he arose and took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts, and pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. And so you see, this man still has an incredible strength. He still has he still has his purpose that God's called him to. He still has a calling that God's called him to. But now he's messing around with sin. He's messing around with it and has no remorse. He's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get away with it. So he's escaping the consequences in the sense that these people were coming to kill him because he came into their camp. And say, yeah, we're taking him out, but he escaped. But you see the foolish thing, he's already in that situation. In verse 4 it says, and he loved the woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, seduce him, and see where his great strength lies. And by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him, and we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and how you might be bound, that one could subdue you. And you read what she says though, she's not even hiding what she's doing.
Right.
She's like, tell me how we can basically take you out. Tell me how we can take away your strength. And I will read another verse, so we'll go back. And Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So here Samson, it's basically the enemy saying, hey, what can I do to seduce you and take away all your strength? He doesn't give her the right answer, but he's playing with her. He's playing with sin. He's toying with it, and he's entertaining it. He's like, oh yeah, this is kind of fun. I'm going to mess with you, see how far we can take this kind of thing. And like the Christian, there's so often the enemy's saying, hey, what is it that strengthens you? What is it that keeps you close to God? It's always going to be prayer, and it's going to be our Bible study. Our devotional time with God. That's what's going to keep us close to God. And so that's always one of the first things to go in a Christian's life when they start walking away from God, because that's what's going to keep us connected to God. Hey, bud. That's what's going to keep us connected, and so that's where our strength lies. But here's Samson, and then she's saying, where does this lie so we can get rid of it? And he starts entertaining it. He starts messing with it. And it's like us in a sense saying, we don't need to do that. We can pray later. We can have a devotional time later. We can do this. I can do this later because I want to do this, or I want to do this, or this, and this. And so Samson's he's in dangerous ground already because he's playing with sin. He's entertaining it. Where Joseph ran away from it, Samson's like, yeah, bring it on. Let's see how much we can have. And so often, unfortunately, you see that in Christians, you see that in believers, and it's heartbreaking. And going back to verse 7, and Samson said to her, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that they have been dried, then I shall become weak and like any other man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings that they had not been dried, and she bound him with them. And now she had men lying in ambush in the inner chamber. And she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he snapped the bowstrings on a thread of flax. He snapped the bowstrings, and as the thread of flax snaps when it touches the fire, so the secret of his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Samson, behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you might be bound. And he said to her, if they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And the men lying in ambush were in the inner chamber. And he snapped the ropes off his arms like a thread. And so you keep going to this point. It's like he keeps letting the enemy in on different parts of his life. It's like us. We're like, well, as long as we have our devotional life and we don't give that up, they can have this part. We can let the enemy in this part, or with entertainment, or whatever. It's different for every person, so I can't specifically say what it is. So in a sense, he's letting the enemy in different parts of his life. He's like, okay, I'm keeping this. You're not getting this, but you can come this way. You can come this way. You come from the sides, but you're not getting what's in front of me. I'm not telling you that. I'm not keeping that from you. But he's already letting the enemy in. He's letting the enemy in so close with him. He just keeps playing with sin. And then you go down to verse 13. Then Delilah said to Samson, until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you might be bound. And he said to her, if you weave 7 locks in my head with the web and fasten it tight with a pin, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into a web. And she made them tight with a pin and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. But he awoke from his sleep and pulled away the pin, the loom, and the web. And she said to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies. And when she pressed him hard and with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. And he told her all his heart and said to her, a razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. And you see this, where it talks about when she pressed him hard, and it words day after day. And the same thing with Joseph, as she came after him day after day. But he always refused it and ran away and never entertained it. Samson kept letting her in. He kept messing with sin and kept letting her come closer and closer and closer. Until he fell in love with this sin. He fell in love with sin. He fell in love with what it offered him. And the pleasure it gave the flesh. And what he could get out of it short term. That he gave it up. He let her in so many different parts. He finally said, you can have it all. I'm so in love with the sin in my life. I'm so in love with what you offer me. That you can have it all. I want this and nothing else. And he gave up the connection between him and God. He gave up what God offered him for what the world offered him. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up again, for he has told me all his heart. And then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called the man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as the other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left them.
There's the key. It was the Lord that was his strength, not his hair.
And the Philistine seized them and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he ground up the mill in the prison. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. But if you go back and he's sleeping on her knees and they cut off the hair. And God's like, this is enough. I'm done with it. I can't take this anymore. This is what you've chosen. This is what you get. I'm gone. So Samson has completely walked away from God and what God called him to. And you see it, he tried to escape again. He's like, oh, I'll get out of it just like every other time. But he couldn't. It was too late. He'd gone farther than he ever wanted to go. And he was gone. I remember when I first became a Christian and I was in a relationship I should have never been in. Carrie always told me, she's like, Omar, it was in a funny way, but she's like, you need to make sure you have a good pair of tennis shoes. Because temptation is going to come upon you, you're going to need to run away.
Good.
And it's not just it's not just a dating aspect, but it's in every part of our life. That we need to be prepared to run from sin whenever it comes upon us. We need to be prepared to run and not even look back. It doesn't matter what we leave behind.
That's right.
We just need to run. Because it doesn't matter what anyone else is going to say about us or think about us. We need to run.
That's it.
And so here's Samson. He had messed with sin so much, it finally got him and God left him. And he was stuck. He messed with it so much that he ended up blind, in the enemy's camp, and in shackles. So he was bound, blind. He lost his vision of what God gave him. He lost the vision that God put in his life for sin because of the pleasures of sin. And here he was. Delilah wasn't there to please him, to help him out, to give him a better life. She was there to bind him. She was there to help herself and to take him out. And he gave it up for a few minutes of pleasure a night. And here he was. He ground at the mill in prison. So he's basically in shackles, just going around in circles. And it's the strength that God gave him for God's people, he was using it for the enemy at this point. It was wasted strength. It was a man that got so far from God, he was using what God gave him for the enemy. And so you see, just people can mess with sin so much and so much and so much, and they get to this point where they're stuck. They have nowhere to go because they have no recognition of anything. They don't have vision in their eyes anymore. They're blind. They're blind because they fell in love with it so much. And not like Joseph, that Joseph ran away. They entertained it, and this is where they ended up. And we'll go on in verse. We'll get that a little later. So you see the two stories. You see the two guys, and you see the differences between them. While Samson entertained sin, Joseph ran away from it. And you see the two ending points. They both had calling in their lives for God's people. And while Joseph used the calling in his life for everyone else, Samson used it for himself. He was all about himself while Joseph was living for God and knew it was ultimately going to be for other people. And you just see the selfishness. You see the lack of a relationship with God. You see the close, just seeing no farther than just themselves. Joseph ended up ruling over the enemy, and the enemy ended up ruling over Samson. And it's sad because it keeps happening to this day. To people that are in church, to people that have at one time loved God. They've let things in. They've said, no, you can have that. It's like when I said we try to see how much we can bring of the world back in, while still keeping our relationship with God. So we keep this part, but we let the enemy in on all sides. Like, I'm keeping this stuff. And you see how much we can play with it until we don't even know when it's going to be too late.
That's right. That's right.
And people think, don't worry, I'll be fine. I'll get right with God eventually. And those are the people that never will. Those are the people that will never get right with God because they don't have any sight. You can't see anything. And you see such a difference. But here's the good news. The people that get to that place, there's hope. Because no one's too far gone. No one is too gone. No one's too lost. No one has sinned their way out of ever having the possibility of salvation again. Because God can do anything.
That's right.
And you look at verse 22. It says, but the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their God and to rejoice. And they said, our God has given Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God has given our enemy into our hand, the ravager of our country, one who has killed many of us. And when their hearts were merry, they said, "Call Samson that he may entertain us." So they called Samson out of the prison, and he entertained them. They made him stand between the pillars, and Samson said to the young man who held him by the hand, "Let me feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean against them." Now the house was full of men and women, and the lords of the Philistines were there. And on the roof there were about 3,000 men and women, who looked on while Samson entertained. And you gotta see Samson, at this point, his eyes are gone. He gets to a point where he's like, what did I do? I got to this point I never thought I was going to get to, and I let myself get here. What happened? And then Samson called to the Lord and said, "O Lord God, please remember me, and please strengthen me only this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." And Samson grasped the two middle pillars on which the house rested, and he leaned his weight against them, and his right hand on one, and his left hand on the other. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. And so the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. Then his brothers and all his family came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, the tomb of Manoah his father, and he judged Israel 20 years. So Samson had such a call on his life that was going to take him to deliver the people of Israel. And because he went such a wayward different way, this is how he ended up. He asked God for another chance to take out these people, and yeah, God gave him the chance. But it's grace that allows God to bring someone back. But you see there's such danger in going that way, of messing with sin. And well, yeah, Samson was able to take out more people at one point because God strengthened him one time. It's just terrifying because you see where Joseph ended up and you see where Samson ended up. And that's the effect of sin. That's the effect of sin on our life when we look at it more as a religious system where we think we can't do this because it's just not going to make God happy, but we can do this kind of thing. We have to have that pure love of Joseph had for God to keep us away from that, because it's not even when we're looking at something like, I probably shouldn't do this. No, I don't want nothing to do with it. It doesn't even enter our mind as a possibility. We don't entertain it. Because you see where Samson ended up. He ended up blind, shackled, and in the enemy's camp. And like I said, he was ruled by the enemy. They used him to entertain. They made fun of him after they bound him because he messed with it so much. And Joseph had everything he wanted. And he used it for the people, not for himself. He didn't take advantage. He's not going to say, I'm not going to do all this for myself. I'm doing this for the people of God because this is what God's called me to do. While Samson was the other way. And it's something that I've just been praying myself, is just asking God, help me love you more so that I don't want anything of the world. Help me love you so much so that I don't want anything. So I don't desire of the tree that you said I shouldn't have. Amen. Help me feast on all the other trees so I have no desire for that at all. And that has to be the desire of our heart. But the thing I love is the fact that if we're so struggling in another area, that God's willing to bring us back. He's willing to strengthen us. He's willing to give us the grace to get back. Amen. So, if you're in that place, we really have to pray to allow God to search our hearts. To search your hearts and my heart. And really, we have to allow God to fix the things that are going wrong. To fix the things that we have allowed into our life that shouldn't be there. And really bring us back to our right perspective where we don't live for ourselves, but we live for the benefit of everyone else. Amen. And we live for the benefit of God. We live for God. Because we know this life isn't about us. I've been reading Ecclesiastes, and it's so amazing just to see how worthless everything else in life is if you're not chasing after God. He's there, and I think it's in 1 Kings 13, but before Samson prayed for wisdom, before he did that, before all the walls were built, it said he brought one of the Philistine women into the city of David. So he had already opened a door to bring the enemy into the city of God, where God should have been. It's like when we bring sin into our lives, it's just a stepping stone for greater. It's just a stepping stone to keep going down that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been really enjoying reading Ecclesiastes because it just makes me realize like nothing else is important except living living our life for God. And well, yeah, we have to take care of things on earth. It's, where's our main focus and where's our perspective at? Is it for God or is it for ourselves? So I'll give you guys a couple minutes just to really spend time with God and let Him search you. And then Ryan, would you mind closing us out in prayer?
God, you sometimes deliver us into the hands of our enemies so that we can see the true condition of our heart.
Amen.
God, that's true in our nation, and it's true here today, and it's true in the Christian church, and it's true in my life. I thank you for this sermon, God.
Amen.
Lord, I pray that we will see the deep principles here of seeing our hearts, God, and that you love us enough to expose things in us, God.
Amen.
And that's not just about keeping the rules, God. It's about seeing how the devil wants to destroy our calling, how he comes in, but that your plans are not thwarted, God, that you're a sovereign Lord. And Lord, we just pray today by your Holy Spirit that you'll speak to each one of us and show us, God, the things in our lives that we have allowed to come in.
Amen.
Show us the importance, open our eyes, let us see the enemy, let us see that the sin, God, and the things that tempt us to draw us away from you, God, are actually the things that the enemy is using to destroy our souls and to destroy our calling and to destroy the good that's on the other side of obedience.
Amen.
If we would just trust you, God. But more than that, Lord, we need new hearts, God. I need a new heart. We need that heart that's going to say, God, I love you more.
Amen.
Lord, that heart of Joseph as opposed to the heart of Samson. God, we need that heart today. We're just asking for it, God.
Yes, Lord.
Thank
Yes.
you that you've exposed where we're at, Lord, that you've exposed this truth, God,
Amen.
this vital truth that is rang from Adam all the way down to every generation, and each man, each person has had this opportunity. Adam had it, and Eve had it, God, to just love you more than the desires, God. The Bible says that we sin hatches when we surrender and we're led away by our desires, God. Help us to see the enemy in it. And Lord, when the enemy comes in our life, Lord, when there's things in our life that are knocking us about, God, let us see that. Lord, let us check our hearts and say, where are we, God? So, Lord, today we just ask you that your Holy Spirit would continue to allow this sermon to ring in us through the week, and that we would examine our heart, God, that when we all are confronted with temptation, God, that we would remember this sermon, that we would say, Lord, thank you for this word. Help us to be more like Joseph than to be more like Samson. Selfishness as opposed to the other side of the calling. What's on the other side of surrendering our rights and our opportunities, God, that there would be nothing in us that the enemy could come and barter with and figure out where our strength lies, God, that when he searches us, God, that it would already be surrendered. Help me to surrender those things today, God, before I leave this place. Just surrender at a deeper level, God. Let us surrender, God, by your strength. God, you expose and you convict because you just want us to agree with you and say, yes, Lord, that is an issue, that is a problem. God, fix us. God, fix us. We cannot fix ourselves, God. Expose different levels, God, in us, because it's to protect us, God. It's to keep us from wasting our lives, God. I have wasted many years, God, of living like Samson, God, and going after things and suffering the consequence of the lost years and the prodigal, as our sister Carrie has said, Lord, but in it, Lord, you win, Lord. You show us things. You break our heart. You break us down, Lord, and you show us that we can't trust ourselves. We cannot trust our flesh. We cannot trust our instincts. We cannot trust our own privacy, God, and our own quietness, which drives many people away, God. Lord, we're just asking you, God, and we're thanking you, God, when the enemy can come in. God, we're thanking you for judging us. We're thanking you for sending in signs that we are on shaky ground when we do get to those places, and for the voices and for the sermons and for the truths that are meant to call us back to seeing our heart condition and saying, God, we're not there. We have not taken care of our heart. We have not said, Lord, come in. Lord, change our hearts today. Lord, change our hearts today, God. Let us be more inclined, God, to lay these things down, to trust you, and to love you, God, and to love your provisions, and to love the other trees in the garden, and say, Lord, we don't need to eat of this tree. Make us wise, God. Make us wise to the enemy's plans when he comes in. Help us to just see the enemy, God, but help us to forsake sin for the right reason, God, for the sake of covenant, for the sake of relationship, God, and for the reasons you want us to walk with you, that you want us to trust you, that you want us to know that you provide, and that we don't have to do it ourselves. Thank you for Omar. Thank you for, Lord, that he was able to just speak without his notes today. God, that your Holy Spirit flowed, and the message is loud and clear, God, and we thank you for it, and Lord, we just pray for the practical application of this truth, God, and that you would just be with our brother, God, and that you would rest him, give him peace to know that he just shared from your word, God, and that you opened your word and that you spoke, Lord, to your congregation. Bless him, bless his family, bless Shelley while she's away. Lord, just prepare them for the next few weeks. Be with him as he works in Walmart. Be with him. Strengthen his heart. Let it be an encouragement to Tom. Let it be an encouragement to Ted and Jesse and all these men, that he's a light. Lord, let us remember that you are using us and that you want to use us, God, and that sin thwarts that, God, and that when we're absolute for you, God, that other men see it like they saw it in Joseph's life, and that I know is what you want, Lord. Forgive us our sin. Forgive us where we failed you. Forgive us where we've surrendered into things in our lives, and help us to be strong today, God. Strengthen us, Lord, throughout this coming week, Lord, that we can meet together next week and just be gladdened by the work that your Holy Spirit is doing in this congregation and in our lives and in the lives of those extended through these people in this room, Lord. We thank you in Jesus' name.